This is a re-recording of the launch webinar which took place on Monday the 6th of November. This webinar simply outlines the North Wales Young Researchers Conference but does not commit you to doing anything. In fact, watching any of the webinars does not commit you to actually taking part in the conference or the competition. To do that, you must submit an abstract which will be briefly discussed here, but there will be a whole webinar dedicated to this process. Welcome everyone, this is the launch webinar for the North Wales Young Researchers Conference. My name is Dr. Laura Hanks. I am a Senior Research Associate at Lancaster University. I'm going to spend the next half hour or so sort of explaining to you what the North Wales Young Researchers Conference is, what this opportunity could mean for you, and how you can get involved. Like I said, I'm a Senior Research Associate, which basically means I spend all day either in a lab or staring at data on a computer, and I've attended lots of researchers conferences over the years that I've been doing research, and I kind of want to extend the opportunity of going to a research conference to the AS and A-level students of North Wales. So you may be asking where Lancaster University fits into a North Wales based event, and so I'm going to bridge that gap now by telling you just a little bit about myself. I was born in Wrexham. I moved over to the North Wales coast during my secondary school education, and I carried out my A-levels in that building at the top there, which some of you may recognise as Coleg Menai Bangor. During my time there, I studied the sciences and maths, and I actually undertook a research internship, and that's when I started to get a feel for research and what science is like once you leave academia. I then went to Cardiff University, moved down to Cardiff University, where I carried out an undergraduate degree in physics and also did a follow-on master's. Towards the end of those degree programs, there are research projects which, again, I really enjoyed, and I really started to get a feel for what science was like once you stopped just learning the concepts, just learning the understanding. And I very much enjoyed my time throughout my experiences of Coleg Menai and Cardiff University. I then moved on to do a physics PhD in Lancaster University, and I have since become a Senior Research Associate at Lancaster University for about 3 years now. So what I am doing now is I have joined, or Lancaster University and I have joined with Bangor City Council and Seren to put together a Young Researchers Conference to give the AS and A-level students of North Wales an opportunity to actually be a part of what being a researcher is actually like. Not being taught facts and understanding, but actually the other side of it, the communication, the innovation, the creativity. For me, the most common misconception about science is that it is simply just about facts. This is not true. Yes, your maths has to be correct. Yes, you have to be logical. Your experiments have to be methodical. That is all true once you have an idea. But absolutely nothing can happen until you have the idea in the first place. And to get really big impact, then you do really need to think outside the box. So there is a lot of creativity and innovation to professional science. And even when you stick within logic, it's a different aspect. Rather than understanding just science concepts really well, there's a different aspect to actually creating a research project, trying to work out how to overcome logistics, working out how to communicate with various people with different levels of knowledge. And you'll need to communicate with lots of different people with lots of different levels of knowledge of the topic that you're doing. And it is this side of science, this side of professional science, that I really would like you to explore and get the chance to see what it's really like in the real world, past education. Now you can see where the inspiration has come from. I'm going to tell you about what this thing actually is. At the crux of it, it is a communication competition. So it's a communication competition that is open to enthusiastic AS and A-level students who are interested in science, technology, engineering, or maths. And what I want you to do is basically take an idea and play with it and tell us about it in accessible detail, and I'll explain what all of that means in a minute. This is based off of real research conferences, so this is how researchers talk to each other. They'll do some research and they will submit an abstract, which I will teach you how to do. You don't have to worry that you don't know what that means. It's basically a very, very brief summary, like half a page of an idea. And if your idea is good enough, you will get through to the conference where you will present your work. So it's sort of based off of that concept, which is what researchers do all around the world all the time. This is how we communicate with each other. And just to be clear, in this case, presenting does not mean to a group of people in a small room where you have lots of people just staring at you. In this case, presenting is literally to whoever comes up to you and looks at your academic display and asks you more questions. So it's a casual conversation with one, maybe two people, rather than you being stood in front of a big room of people. That's not always the case in research conferences, but that's what's going to happen in this particular one. So who are we looking for? We are looking for anyone basically that's interested in science, technology, anything like that. So any future science, technology, engineering or maths undergraduates, anyone interested in a research career or just generally interested in STEM subjects. There are a lot of transferable skills that you will get from taking part in this conference and competition. But most of all, we want students who are scientific but capable of being creative. And there are other sort of core messages I want you to take from this as well. And those are that science is actually everywhere. It's something that you can find in sports, it's something you can find in computing, and I really want you to find your passion and utilize it in this conference. So now I'm going to run through some of the opportunities that taking part in this conference will give to you. Obviously, you'll be part of a researcher conference, which at AS&A level is unheard of. It's not really something that happens to my knowledge at all. The first chance you would get to do a researchers conference would be in your master's year, and that's just to your university peers. After that, you'd have to be a PhD student or higher to take part in a researchers conference, and that would be, you know, speaking to people across the country or other countries even. So it is a fantastic opportunity in that sense. You will get to interact with researchers such as myself, but also other researchers from industry, not just academia. You'll learn a load of essential skills for the STEM undergraduate modules, mainly based around science, communication, how to convey data in an accessible way. But also you'll build confidence talking to a range of audiences about something that you've become an expert in. It gives you the opportunity to be the person in the know when you're speaking to anyone, you know, even if they are a researcher, unless they've gone and looked into exactly what you're looking into, they're not going to know what you're talking about, and you're going to have to gauge what level of understanding they have to be able to communicate with them appropriately. So obviously you gain good technical communication skills, which, to be honest, are useful not just in science but generally. Most jobs, you know, involve some level of communication where you will know something more than someone else, and you'll have to translate your knowledge into what they know. Of course, there will be fantastic networking opportunities. The people at the conferences, at the conference, sorry, like I said, will be researchers, but there'll also be, you know, other companies there, and they'll be looking at your work. You'll get to show your work to various professionals. And throughout the whole process, you are supported by actual researchers. So people like myself who've gone and done these conferences before, and we will teach you how to do each step of the competition and the conference. So like the abstract and then later the academic display. The other things that I want to sort of impress upon you is actually how much you can impact the world. It's sort of forgotten that, again, science is about discovery and innovation, and actually if you want to see a change in the world, you know, all it takes is one idea. All it takes is you having one idea and going, right, I'm going to do that. And it's a really powerful thing to know that you can have that sort of impact. And also just how science development is everywhere. It's not just in universities. A lot of people think of universities as sort of places of learning, and they are, but they also have an awful lot of research going on in them, and as do an awful lot of companies, and this happens across the board of industries, and I'll go through a bit more detail later. But sports, you know, gaming, anything, there are technological developments everywhere. This year's conference theme is technology of the future, but technology is a very loose term, so effectively I want you to take something that is known today to some extent, scientific concept, mathematical model or algorithm, even an existing tech, and project it forward into the future and put it into an application which will be very impactful to an individual person's life or to society as a whole. This could be 10, 50 years in the future, and just really tell us why it would be so important, so impactful, or so useful in everyday life in the future. And I want this to be in any industry. This is really to enforce the science is everywhere. If you already have a hobby or an existing passion in any given industry, you know, if you're really into gaming or whatever, or if you really want to find something for renewable resources, then go ahead. Just you know, maybe you've already had an internship on a particular topic, whatever it is. I want you to find your passion or utilize an existing passion to take an idea as far as it can go. Having passion about an idea is as important as working on it. You can do this through a couple of different routes. You can I'm going to give you an example of two of them, which is basically taking a scientific concept, so something that's sort of known about today but isn't really in an application already, or technology transfer, so something that might be utilized in one industry or one application right now, but actually would still be very, very useful in something completely different. So first I'm going to talk to you about technology transfer, and I'm going to tell you about someone called Annabelle Cartwright. Dr. Annabelle Cartwright is a lecturer from Cardiff University. She taught me while I was there, but she told us the story of how she left university at master's level. She obviously went back to get her PhD later, but she left at master's level and became the founder and technical director of a company called Oxford Metrics. Now, Oxford Metrics, their main technology that they were developing was based on crash test dummies. What they wanted to do is to better evaluate the forces in different crash test scenarios. So they were trying any which way they could find to better create mathematical models based on movement, so they can better assess trajectories and force and basically simulate different crash test scenarios. Now, all of you will know about this technology, you just don't realise that you do know about it. This technology is called 3D motion capture. It is now used throughout the movie and gaming industry, and it has unlocked a whole new generation of films for us. Basically, all it took was one person who was working at Oxford Metrics to think, well, okay, what we're doing is we're using sensors, we're developing a technology to improve mathematical models based on movement. Well, Pixar, they hire so many people to develop advanced mathematical models based on movement because of their animations. That's what they want. Why don't we bridge that gap? Why don't we utilize this technology for that application as well? And it's not instead of, it's as well. And what this means is you get an awful lot more investment into the technology, and it becomes more advanced and more powerful, and is still used in crash test dummy simulations, but it's got an awful lot more sophisticated because of the investment from having multiple applications. And of course, it has provided us with a whole new type of animation. And all it took was one person to look at this and go, ah, this technology is great in this application, but it could also be great in another application. So that was transfer of technology. So that was the example of something that already exists in one application, but it could be very useful in a different application. Now, another avenue you could go through is breakthrough science. So this is actually my research, infrared detectors. I develop infrared detectors to go into commercial devices to non-invasively measure glucose and other things. Now, let's say you've found an article that says basically that you can use infrared detectors to put into commercial devices and non-invasively measure glucose. Now, that technology isn't out there yet, but someone has said we're trying to get it out there. That's the breakthrough science bit. Okay, so what I would want you to do is take that idea and go, okay, right, well, they've said it can do this. What does that actually mean in the future? Take it a step further from whatever article you've read and try and innovate for yourself. So, okay, commercial devices, well, that means that glucose detection in smartwatches. Well, if we can detect glucose in smartwatches, we can diagnose diabetes faster. Okay, well, and if everyone's got a smartwatch, or, well, you know, a lot of people have got a smartwatch, we'll be collecting mass data. Well, this might mean that we can predict when people are becoming diabetic, because we will have plenty of trends of people who don't have diabetes, and we'll have trends of people who have diabetes, and we might actually be able to analyze that data to see someone trending towards becoming diabetic. And so the core idea you would go through is, okay, you know, infrared detectors for non-invasively measuring glucose, and the future tech would be how to predict diabetes with a watch. That would be sort of the title of the project. Using the same idea, you could go in a different direction. So the same breakthrough science idea, you could, let's say you found a journal article that said there's suspected links between dementia and glucose. Okay, well then maybe we can utilize the same sort of technology for detecting dementia at home. Maybe that's something that we can do. Maybe it isn't, but you know, why not look into it? Maybe if you can put it in a phone, you can have an app for sugar content in food. You know, take a picture of your meal and it'll tell you how much sugar is actually in the meal in front of you. Why not a nutritional content app? Is that too far? Like, you know, what are the limitations of this? But for now, effectively, what I would want you to do is to find a breakthrough idea and go, well, where could this be? Like, how far could we take this idea to make it as impactful to society or as a person, as an individual in the future? So in terms of the actual communication competition, or what you would actually need to do, you would start by trying to find inspiration and really just get an idea of your core concept. Obviously, you can look anywhere for this. I've tried to keep it very, very open. Find your passion, utilize an existing passion, and just come up with the core concept and idea. Then your actual output is to write an abstract. There will be a whole webinar on this. There is a deadline of the 8th of December to do an abstract by. I will go through a bit more about what you actually need to do for your initial inspiration and your abstract over the next couple of slides. Again, once you've submitted the abstract, that's when you're actually entering into the competition. So what I would be expecting from you right now is to look through open access materials and news outlets. It doesn't have to be scientific journals, even just anywhere where you have seen an idea, a scientific idea. This could be from New Scientist, etc. And have a look around that to try and find your core technology, core science idea. So once you have your core science idea or a technology that you have found that you want to innovate, and you have an idea of what application it could be used in, again, any industry, anything that that you have a passion in already, or anything that you really think could work well, you'll then need to create an abstract. There will be a separate webinar actually teaching you how to create one of these. Now this is basically like a summary of your idea. This is like a blurb on the back of a book, just very brief. What is the technology or method? You will have to tell us where you get that from though. So you'll be taught how to do something called referencing. You can't just sort of make all of it up. It's got to be, you know, it's got to be something that you have found. It's based in science, it's based in logic. So you'll tell us a little bit about the tech or method, and then you'll tell us what the application is and why it would be so impactful. Now the technical details of the abstract, the sort of the structure we're expecting, is something a little bit on the right hand side here. The text would be about half a page. In reality, it doesn't need to even be that, as long as you've explained a bit about how the technology or method works a little bit in accessible detail, then that's fine. Usually add a diagram or graph or image or something to really entice the reader and make them wonder what on earth you're talking about. And of course you have to state where, if there's any particular thing you've got from somewhere else, like an image, you have to reference literature, which you'll be shown how to do, and you'll also be given a template in terms of the structure of the format of these things. I should mention that the deadline for submitting an abstract is the 8th of December. It was the 1st of December. It's been moved to give you a little bit more time, and you will be entering the competition. Once you submit an abstract, that's you entering the competition. So you can still attend the webinars beforehand, but once you've submitted an abstract, we're considering you at that point in the conference and competition. One thing I should mention is that Saren will be getting a link out to you for the abstract webinar, which is next week. I'm going to briefly go over with you the kind of thing that we expect from an abstract now, so you just have a little bit of an idea of what's expected of you. So effectively, for the examples above, we've got, you need to describe what the technology or method is. So for the previous examples, infrared detectors for commercial devices to non-invasively measure glucose, maybe a brief explanation as best as you can about that. It's got to be to an accessible audience, which means that your peers, other people that have studied science at A level, should understand the language that you are using, but obviously they won't have won't have researched what you've researched. So that's the sort of level of audience you're after. So get your friends to read your abstracts, and if they can follow what you're saying, then it's probably a pretty good, it's got a pretty good shot. It'll be well communicated, and obviously try and make it as interesting as possible. What is the application? Nutritional app. Why would it be so impactful? It would transform the diet and food industry, and people gain personal understanding of nutritional intake and deficits. And sort of on the motion capture side, you would do the same sort of thing. And as much detail as you can, without having researched absolutely loads, you know, you've only got a few weeks, just get your core points across. Don't worry too much about it. But overall, the whole thing has to be grounded in logic, and you have to convince us why it's a good idea. So this is the first stage of the competition. We'll be given a load of abstracts from a load of students, and we'll be going through them, and you'll be selected from the abstract whether you're going through to the conference or not. Again, this is how research conferences run all over the world. You submit an abstract and you hope that they like your idea enough, or you've communicated your idea well enough that they think, oh yes, this person could give a good presentation, could tell me a lot more about this interesting research. So that's what you're trying to do right now. Then you move on to actually making an academic display. This is where the real research begins. So you'll find out in the new year whether you've gotten through to the conference, and at that point the real research begins. So you'll have your starting point, which you'll have found, and you'll have your end point, and you need to tell us how you would get from where you are now to where you are going. If you were to design a project with no limits, you know, just how are you going to get there? And you have to make I'll give you an example of an academic display. You'll make an academic display and you'll present with that academic display at a conference event. So the further research that you would do, I should say the conference event is in March, so you would have basically a few months to do further research. And you'd look into what steps are needed to make it happen. You lay out the trajectory and you see how far you can take it. I mean, you might start off with an idea and then realize you can go further, figure out what the limitations of this technology is, and you know, some of the limitations will be out of your control. Maybe you get to a point and you're like, oh well, okay, a whole different technology needs to be discovered, advanced, blah blah blah, in order for this idea to happen, and it's not your job to then research that technology. Just identify, okay, well, this technology would have to be 10 times faster or whatever for this to really work. Just lay out what the blockers would be of getting your idea out there, and you know, maybe what it would take, etc. So at this point you are designing a research project. This is how people get funding to do the research that they want to do. This is how technology gets developed. They form a project plan, and they hope that in the process of researching everything goes the way they were expecting. So if things don't go the way you're expecting, if you realize it's not feasible, that's okay too. This is research, this is discovery. That's what research is about. It's not, if you already knew how to do everything, it wouldn't be research. That's not the point of it. So, okay, you've come with an idea that you've put in your abstract, and you've been accepted to the conference, and you think, oh great, fantastic. And then you start to panic because you realize one step is not possible. That's fine. Tell us why would that not be possible? What would be needed for this to happen? Even if it's a physical, against physical laws, you can explain why this is not an avenue that can be explored, because if it's a good idea, people are going to try and do it, and if you don't tell us why it can't be done, well then other people are going to try and do it, aren't they? So it's still valuable to go on that journey and explore and discover and find the things that are possible, are not possible. And you know, if you find out that your original idea is not possible, maybe you then tell us what could be possible instead. So a further example is augmented reality. So this is, you know, you'll have seen it on Pokemon Go. I'm assuming you've all at least seen Pokemon Go. A Pokemon will be in front of you, you know, on your phone, in your living room, in your garden, whatever. And in that setting, they don't really care about scale or lighting or anything like that. It's already used. It's already in our everyday society, right? People have used this. It's an application that is established. You can also use augmented reality to see what furniture that you haven't bought yet would look like in your living room. Or if you're buying jewellery, you can try on bits of jewellery using augmented reality. And these have different these have different levels of sophistication, and they are successful to different degrees. But what if you were going to use augmented reality for real-time navigation in cars, right? So again, taking this is technology that's already established, moving it to a different application. What would need to happen to do that? So why isn't it in every car already? Tell us why it's not in every car already. You know, it's already established technology. Surely it's the same thing. Well, no, it's not, because you know, for a car, if you're traveling 60 miles an hour or whatever, you need to have really fast technology to be able to do this. And the road systems need to be very well known. So what you'll do is, maybe you suggested this in the abstract, you went, okay, great, let's have a look. And in your further research, you'll discover that Mercedes have already done this. They've already tried it. Okay, and what they found is that roads and roundabouts are too complicated. Okay, it's a well-known map that is needed, and faster technology. Okay, so those are your blockers. So you say, well, you know, this is where everything started. This was my idea, where it was going. Okay, well, what happens now? Well, you can use it for walking, surely. If the technology is slow, well, can you use it for walking, or could you use it in a map that is already well known, like in a theme park, right? Maybe once you've established it for those settings, you can step into certain cities in America which are just, you know, grid systems rather than roundabouts, if roundabouts are the complicated part. And if you find any evidence of anything that's already been tried to be developed, reference it. Like, you know, I've done here, there is a link to an article where they talk about the problems, the reality of the navigation they've tried. So I'm expecting you to tell us, what are the fundamental limits, what are the actual capabilities, and this is all in the further research. Okay, so you've done the real research, the actual further exploration. Now it's time to make an academic display ready for the conference event. So this is an academic display. Now, don't get too intimidated. Both of these are based off of years of research. And the deadline of this will be late February, just to give us a couple of weeks to print off everything for you. What you want on an academic display is actually not too many words. I would argue the one on the left hand side here has too many words. The one on the right hand side has about the right amount of content. Again, accessible detail. This will be shown to the public. We're expecting people to, science enthusiasts who won't necessarily know, you know, the level of knowledge that you've researched, but will have a general understanding of science. We're expecting them to be able to understand what you're saying. You want the narrative to be very easy to follow. But you are going to be standing in front of this at the conference event. So realistically, the things that you want are just the core diagrams to help you explain what's happening, right? You don't need to have too much explanation on there, but also it should be quite eye-catching. People want to be, you know, interested in this. You should be able to, from across the room, go, oh, that one over there looks quite fascinating. I'm going to go there. So convince us that this is a realistic future based in logic, set out the steps, limitations, and really tell us what the impact would be in the future. There will be a template for this, so don't worry about that. And again, there'll be another webinar to explain to you how to make an academic display. Now moving on to the actual conference, you will stand in front of your display. It'll be a half-day session. It'll be open to the public. It will be open to researchers like myself, but also industry researchers. It'll also be open to MPs, and basically anyone who is interested in science can walk through and ask you about your display, about your research. These will be casual conversations. It will be you standing there. You'll probably have a blurb in your head of what you would say. Someone will come up to you and say, right, oh, this looks interesting. Can you tell me a bit more about it, please? And you'd probably have in your mind the kind of thing that you want to say. But then it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation after that. They might ask follow-up questions about, oh, how does this fit into this setting? Or have you thought about that? Or whatever. This does not mean you need to know everything. In fact, it just means that you need to know how to communicate your idea well. You need to know your idea well enough to be able to say, to be able to have a normal conversation about your research. Now this is a competition, so there will be judges. Judges will be mixed in terms of some of them will be researchers, some of them will be lay people, and they will assess you based on your communication. And at this is a competition, so there will be 3 winners, and of the 3 winners you will have gold, silver and bronze. Again, there'll be more information about how you actually want to communicate your research, but it also gives you the opportunity. I mentioned there was industry researchers. There will also be companies there with their own stalls, and they'll be walking around looking at your research. This is one of the big things, big opportunities about this conference. You'll be the expert on what you've researched, and you have an opportunity to speak to other researchers and just showcase your skills, your ability. And a very key transferable skill is to take someone who is asking you questions that you're not quite sure where their knowledge base is or what they're quite talking about, and go, I'm not really sure what you're talking about, but what I do know is, and then talk about your research. Very, very good skill to have, and it's a fantastic networking opportunity. So as I said, it'll be a half-day conference session. There'll then be a short break, and then there'll be a prize giving. Prizes include tours around research labs. There'll be cash prizes. This is for the 3 winners, but the gold winner will have a one-on-one discussion with a researcher in the field of the project that you've decided. So to the best of my ability, I will try and find a researcher in the UK that will have a one-on-one session, and of course you can then talk about your project idea, how feasible it is, but more importantly for you probably, how to get into that field of study. If that's what you're truly interested in, well, how do you start having a career in that topic? And even if you don't want to be part of the competition, still consider the conference. There'll be seminars, there'll be talks from industry researchers, and it will just be a really great place to see all the opportunities that are ahead of you as young future researchers. So thank you very much for listening. The key dates you can find are down here. You'll see that the academic display webinar is actually before the abstract deadline. This is just because I think that it's still a really important skill to develop, is how to make a really good academic display. And again, one of the main points of this is to learn how to communicate well. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask me any questions at the email address above. You should be hearing from Sarah about the webinars as they come up, and reminders about deadlines and things like that. One last point is the actual conference. I don't think I mentioned the actual conference event is in Bangor, in the Bangor Council chambers. And that will be held in March. But we'll talk about all of those details further along the way. Thank you for listening.